So to start, I'm going to bring up a few helpers, folks from the Misfit economy, and I want to ask all of you to stand up, if you will. We're going to really embody some of the protagonists from the research that I've been doing. You have your mic? Great. Wonderful. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just repeat whatever you hear. This protagonist, you're a pirate, right?
Right.
Okay.
Just a sound?
Yeah, so I think he's going to lead us in some pirate noises, and then we're going to copy him.
So what I first need as a test from you is your brightest grin. Like, show me your teeth, like really exaggerating. I want to see your white. You're not in such a good mood. It helps biophysically if you grin, even if there's not a joke. It makes you happy, okay? And now we go to our depth of our stomach and do the pirate sound, which is much like this, and then, Arr! You do that? Yes. Be an animal. Okay. Maybe you turn to the person next to you and you show your teeth again. I hope you cleansed your teeth this morning and. Arr! Very good. That's the pirate.
Wonderful. Thanks. Great. Next, we're going to have the insider, who is this misfit that you can find within the multinational corporation or these huge institutions. And he maybe feels a bit bad about himself. He doesn't always feel like he's a misfit because he has to conform.
And that is really tough for me.
I sense that, yeah.
But to do my job, I want to change something inside. So I have to find a way to connect myself with as many people as possible. So nice meeting you, Alexa.
So good to meet you.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Yeah.
And now would love to have you also shake hands with your neighbors and say, nice meeting you, thanks for connecting, nice meeting you, thank you very much.
So you're very slippery.
Yes.
You're a slippery one.
Mic check!
Here you go. No?
Mic check! Mic check! We the people have had enough. We the people have found our voice. I'm hungry.
Thank you, protester. And now we're going to hear from a more unlikely misfit. He led us a bit earlier today in a meditation, but one of the misfit characters that I have a lot of time for is the Hermits. So imagine that you're in a beautiful valley somewhere near a mountain, living in a little shack.
The hermit comes to you to invite you for a stand-up meditation. It starts like this. Both arms up. Close your eyes. And then both arms go very low, slowly, go slowly. Breathing out and connecting with the earth, which is our mother.
Thank you, Hermit. That was very relaxing. So those are just some of the misfit protagonists that we feature in the book and that we've been researching. And the more interviews that we've done, we've been able to place them essentially into 4 different categories. Basically a different spatial orientation that each of these misfits have within the system. The hermit is very much the runaway misfit, the person that opts out, that wants to leave the system. You have the underground kind of misfit. This is the gangster or the hustler. You have insider misfits or social entrepreneurs, you know, the character that Dominic played, people that are trying to change the system from within. And then you have the oppositional misfit, the protester, the provocateur. So hermits, I actually just engaged in a hermit experiment. I rented a place in Pennsylvania in the middle of nowhere and tried to live there for a little while and just do writing. But I think the hermit provocation is, what if we didn't always come to conferences like this? What if we didn't always focus on external innovation, but focused on internal innovation? So what if we really built out time for this immersive kind of inquiry? And it's interesting because there are a lot of people that actually use hermit instincts for different phases of their misfit journey. So within the startup world, for example, there's a wonderful startup called the New Hive that basically lived on an island off the coast of Seattle in the middle of nowhere to not just build a startup, but to ask themselves how they could change self-expression online. And they were there for an entire year just saturating in this alternative vision of how the internet could be. And so I think there's something that we can learn a lot from Hermits, both in just the power of peeling off from the system. I grew up in Cambridge, which is super near to where Henry Thoreau spent his time and wrote Walden. And I always found there was something really powerful in this ability to really detach yourself from the system, from the dominant logics that we're all kind of living in, and be able to imagine a different alternative. The next character that we saw portrayed was really this idea of the insider misfit. And so one of my first jobs after college was to spend time within this totally strange foreign ecosystem for me, which was the corporation. And what I learned was that there are actually all these people that are totally revolutionary, these kinds of hackers that are working within our systems to try and reprogram these huge multinational corporations or these multilateral development banks. And they have a lot of useful skills. They have to be able to navigate these huge corporate bureaucracies. They have to be able to code switch, to understand what is the language, what are the sort of the cultures, the norms within the institution that I work with, and then be able to work with external stakeholders. So this is a huge groundswell. This is a huge movement that we're nurturing. You could call them social entrepreneurs, people that are really reprogramming the DNA of the institutions that they're a part of. The next is the hustler. So we spent a lot of time interviewing folks. One of my best conversations was with this guy, King Tone, who used to run the Latin Kings, which is a Hispanic street gang. And he ran this gang in New York. And what he was trying to do was very much change management for an underground organization. He was trying to completely repivot the culture of the gang, of the Latin Kings, into a social movement equivalent to the Black Panthers or something like this. So he built out alliances with civic leaders and really went about implementing this change program. He kept the younger members separate from the older members so that these bad instincts wouldn't rub off. And that was really just an interesting story, both of pivoting and how you think about some of these underground organizations pivoting, but also the gangster itself. It's a misfit that has a lot of improvisation, that has hustle, that is super entrepreneurial. He was one of the best CEOs that I've ever met. He has incredible leadership. And so to be able to recognize some of our underground actors as actually having a lot of the same skills and capacities that we applaud formal entrepreneurs for is something that's really important. This is the Provocateur, or the antagonist. And what I love about this character is that they're really able to shake up our systems. They come in and they really myth bust and question so many of the assumptions that we hold. I know, this one keeps falling. Sorry, can you guys hear me? Way too loud. All right, I'll put this one down. Sorry, this is a little bit technically difficult. It's okay? Great, so the Provocateur is really much better. Good, thank you. Thanks for saying something. The Provocateur is really this person that is questioning things, that is questioning the dominant logic. And they might not always be the person coming up with solutions, but they're changing the narratives that we live in. This is a comparative diagram that I made last week actually for this conference to begin to think about some of the different philosophies of change that some of these actors have and some of the fears that they're motivated by. So, you know, within the runaway or the hermit position, you often are trying to escape this feeling of living in a toxic culture, of wanting to return to either a utopian future or a simpler time. I think the challenge about this position is it's often difficult to translate what you've learned back into the system. So it's difficult to package your insight back to really hack or change the system. I know after Henry Thoreau had this amazing hermit experience, he ended up going back and working at his family's pencil factory. So he went from this huge transcendentalist to just plugging right back in. And so I think that's one of the real challenges with that alternative position. Too loud? Okay. Can we just turn the sound down? Or I don't need the mic, actually. Maybe that's better. Okay. Okay, cool. So the insider position. We talked a little bit about this, but these people are very reformist. Their weakness is perhaps that they believe in a very slow version of change. And when I initially started meeting these people, it was interesting because it almost felt like an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. Like they would all come in and they said, we're trying to stealthily create this sort of change that our institutions don't buy into. So they really have to be adept at navigating these bureaucracies, at being incredibly patient, and they often have this little feeling of living in bad faith. They feel sometimes that they're sellouts, and they often contemplate leaving the organizations that they're in. The oppositional misfit. I think these tend to be much more this idea that change comes from the outside. You know, this is questioning orthodoxies. You're sometimes prone to abstraction, but I think the real fear here is one of co-option. What happens when our hackers start working for the system? There's this real concern that you might lose some of your authenticity. And what I wanted to say is I don't think these are pure types necessarily. You know, over the course of a life, you can occupy a lot of these different misfit stances. So, for example, old school pirates used to be part of the system, and then they spun out to create their piracy business. So they became antagonistic misfits. Or there was someone I knew who used to be a sort of juvenile delinquent, and then he ended up working for a huge, massive company to redo their entire agriculture system and make it more sustainable. So I think you occupy a lot of these different kinds of stances, and you can actually use misfit instincts differently depending on the kind of change that you're creating and that you're trying to bring about. And very much in my own work, this is something that I do all the time. I feel like I try and hedge. Basically, you know, I don't want to work too much just with institutional actors, or I don't want to work too much in building bridges between underground actors and the mainstream economy. And so I really try and have this broad portfolio that allows me to engage in different kinds of change. You'll see the first one is this Cubicle Warriors Toolkit, which is very much building capacity for people trying to make change within institutions. The Pigeonhole is an amazing literary startup that's disrupting publishing and really taking the industry out of it and allowing authors to connect directly with readers, and this is launching soon. Defy Ventures is a fantastic program that takes ex-convicts and basically recognizes their skills as leaders and connects them with formal entrepreneurship opportunities. Wisdom Hackers is maybe unlocking this little inner hermit, but it's basically a group that we're bringing together to explore one big meta question. And we each will be taking the summer to explore a question that we feel like is very ancient, but has huge implications for modern times. So how is intimacy changing? How do we think about our technology consumption? So these big questions, but getting people a little bit off the grid to really explore them in a way where they might not already have the opportunity. And these are just some of the skills that I've seen spanning these portfolio of projects. Resilience, I think, is one of the most important, and these we flesh out more in the book. But I think regardless of where you're operating as a misfit, if you're in a huge institution or if you're in the underground economy, this ability to keep going and to pick yourself back up and to also reinvent yourself. So King Tone, who used to lead the Latin Kings, then went on to prison and was in prison for a long time, and he's gotten out. And as soon as he got out of prison, he started cleaning toilets. And so that for him was a very trying moment, and now he's working with youth to rehabilitate youth that are at risk of juvenile delinquency. And so just this ability to sort of pivot your own personal career and have a more elastic identity is really important. And lastly, I really wanted to sort of reflect on how these themes have implications for the sharing economy. One of my biggest failures was trying to build a new economy coalition that we did a couple years ago in Asheville, North Carolina. And there was a real challenge in building community, in getting each of these different pockets of the new economy movement to get along. You had innovators who I would put in that autonomy circle and entrepreneurs. You had folks from this economic justice advocacy perspective, and then you had folks that were really into sort of resilience and nature. And these were people that were very much part of the permaculture movement. And none of these cultures really coexisted. And so one of my learnings based on that experience was just the ability to operate in one's niche and like finding the right time for some of this movement building, but also the ability to sort of separate these communities. And I think it's also just a good reminder because so much of the sharing economy, collaborative consumption movement is just one piece of this broader new economy agenda. And so I think that's important to keep in mind. And it might be one of the easier pieces that we're cracking onto now. But there's so many different kinds of actors that are playing in this space with very different theories of change and very different mental models for re-envisioning a more sustainable society. Thank you.